For men, all right, this is more so of the experience regarding the dating apps and regarding the psychology of things. Okay. For many men, all right, there's a lot of low match rates. Okay. This is just a place that we just got to be honest. We got to call things what it is. All right. There's a lot of many more low match rates. Okay. There's a lot of swiping, a lot of reaching out, a lot of messaging, no matches. Right. Okay. Number two, there's a feeling of being invisible. Okay. These are just things that men have talked about, have expressed in studies and group studies and all the things. All right. There's a sense of rejection fatigue that's present. Okay. And we're going to talk about all this and why this is important, not to coddle, but to just present. All right. So there's pressure to initiate. Okay. Just whether just say there. So there's a pressure to initiate, right? The pressure to speak up first, say something first, all the things to get something going. Okay. Then there's performance anxiety. A lot of men who feel like they have to be something else, okay, in order to be seen as a valid option, to be matched, to connect, to build something and do something moving forward. Okay. For many men, there's a sense of over swiping, right? For many men, believe it or not, there's probably plenty of people who are on dating apps throughout all their day. Okay. They got many pockets throughout their day where they're just swiping left, swiping right. Okay. Disregard left and send a message right, like here, dismiss here. Okay. So it creates a different sense of fatigue the more and longer they're on it. All right. And then measuring worth by response rates. This is a pretty big one. Okay. This isn't just limited to dating apps. If you just look in the social media stratosphere, one of the greatest things that men love to do, at least a man of culture, someone who isn't really healed, okay, but is looking for attention, who's performative, all right, they'll definitely get into disagreements, arguments, roast sessions with their homeboy. And what's the first thing that they run to? Man, how many girls you got? Right? I got a girlfriend, you don't. Right? I get laid, you don't. Right? That kind of stuff that is definitely compared to measuring worth, right? Which is very dysfunctional. But for a lot of men, the only thing they know how to do because their value has always been tied to what? Women, getting women, all the things. Okay. So this also is shown in measuring worth by response rates. Okay. How many messages you get, how many likes you get, how many matches you get, how many people are investing into you, connecting with you, adding you, visiting your Instagram, right? Shooting their shot, whatever the case is. All right. And that is really a sense and overarching of men's experiences when it comes to using dating apps, just to give a hint. Okay. Probably many more, but those are a few. Now, when we travel over to the women's side, all right, for women, there's a lot of overwhelming attention. Okay. A lot of overwhelming attention. So, there's a lot of likes, a lot of messages, a lot of connections. And for a woman, sometimes that's a lot. Okay. Sensory overload to a degree. Okay. There's low quality, right? So even though there's a lot of attention, okay, might open up her app. She'll be active on there within due time. She might have like 70 plus people trying to reach out, connect, all the things. But there's low quality of messaging. Okay. There isn't necessarily an engagement of a startup of a conversation. It's maybe a liked photo, right? Swiped photo, right? There's a match, but there's no one breaking the ice. He's not reaching out. She's not reaching out. Nobody is starting anything. She's not going to start anything. And maybe there is a message that's sent, but it's not something that is welcoming to a response, welcoming to further a conversation. Maybe it's a statement. Maybe it's off putting because of how aggressive this statement was. It's a plethora of things that play a role in it. Nonetheless, there's low quality of messages. Okay. For many women, there's a fear of sexual pressure. Okay. All right. There's a feeling of sexual pressure, right? I have to come out here and I have to come into, I feel pressured, or women feel pressured to engage with someone sexually. Okay. Man, if I match with them, if they like me, at some point they're going to ask or want to participate in something physical to be connected with. In fact, if you actually do a lot of your research, one of the more common struggles for women in dating today, okay, is that pressure to perform sexually. Eventually, the conversation is going to be had. The moment is going to show up. Okay. And there's a lot of back and forth fatigue that's created there. Okay. Safety concerns is a massive thing for women that kind of ties into the previous statement there as well. A lot of women don't feel safe. A lot of women don't feel safe because of the dangers that a lot of men have presented within society towards women. The lack of care for women, the lack of protection of women, okay, without needing there to be a reward on the other side for the connection to just be a safe one, even if it didn't reach a specific level, a specific layer. Okay. If you ask women in their experiences, many of them will tell you that they've experienced some pretty rough things when it comes to dating. Okay. Person didn't know how to take no. So the guy crashed out, right? For some, it's stalking. For some, it's to extreme lengths and degrees of traumatic experiences. Okay. Not everything is a traumatic experience. However, when we're talking about that here, we're talking about something that's very, very severe. All right. So there's a lot of safety concerns. I don't really know how comfortable and how safe it is to really engage with this person, talk to this person, continue a conversation with this person, meeting up with this person anywhere. Okay. And the hesitancy of doing that. Then there's a filtering fatigue. Okay. There isn't necessarily a specific filter that's presented, at least on the free version of apps, let alone maybe the ones that you might buy and upgrade. Okay. So the filtering fatigue, I'm looking for something specific. So constantly, right, running into various different accounts, matches, or people that don't necessarily fit the description of the type of individual you're looking for, not just off looks, but off of qualities of measurement. Okay. That's an issue. And then for many women, there's a confusion of attention with pursuit. Okay. So if you notice, there's some trends of these that, yes, have to do with the external experiences, but there's some, maybe more, that have to deal with the internal perspective to an external experience. Okay. There's a meaning that's attributed to the experience that is giving permission for someone down the line to respond and behave in a specific way. And with confusion of attention with pursuit, that definitely fits. Right. And so even though you have a lot of attention, this person is messaging you. Okay. This person is connecting with you, asking questions about you. Okay. We conflate that as pursuit when it's really just attention being given, quite frankly, because maybe you're not used to that level of attention. Believe it or not, I've had clients, women specifically, stepping into the dating space who haven't dated either in a long time or ever for various different reasons. Okay. And so because they're the first, this is the first experience to get some type of attention in specific directions. Hey, it can easily be conflated as, oh, yeah, like this person's pursuing me. This person is showing effort. This person wants to connect. This person wants to take things further. When it's all talk, less action. Okay. And so we're going to spend some time in this conversation kind of differentiating the two. All right. And then for women, finally, there's emotional exhaustion from inconsistency. Okay. So, from the psychological approach, this is exactly what we're transitioning into. We have to set the stage for what men and many women are experiencing when it comes to the dating space as a whole. Okay. And all of them are frustrated over something that seems similar. Okay. But from a psychological standpoint, is different due to the lens in which dating relationships are viewed between men and women. Okay. And just for maybe a sort of resource and reference, okay, for everybody listening in. If you want to check out a book, I think it's very, very helpful. It is titled Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Okay, this is actually a book I've listened to, I've read, I've suggested to clients numerous of times because yes, even though it centers on the sector of communication between men and women and the differences in between such and how the brain operates and all those things for men and women and how different that is, we easily can see how that integrates into dating as well. Okay, so you do not have to be in a relationship to read this book. I encourage you to read this book because it's going to give you leverage, okay, on how to approach, communicate, and engage with the opposite sex, especially when it comes to experiencing romance, beginning stages, having conversations, so on and so forth. Okay. And so to really put it and summarize what we just broke down, men often struggle with access fatigue and women often struggle with filtering fatigue, but both are being tested in lanes of security. Okay. So even though men and women are experiencing these apps differently, the common thing that's necessary for both parties to engage in it healthily is maturity, discernment, regulation, wisdom, and humility. Okay. This is not about who's right. This is not about men being better than women, women being better than men. I could care less about that conversation because that is not the direction that we are going to take any of this. Okay. This is not adding to more of what is already out there and what people have created in their minds to be a gender war. Okay. Because what's crazy is men need women, women need men. Straight like that. We need each other. Okay. But in order to get to that point, we have to also realize that even though a lot of the frustrations that we're both experiencing in different lanes point to something similar, the needs are still the same. The needs are still the same, maybe expressed differently and met differently. However, the need remains the need for maturity, discernment, regulation, humility, wisdom. We bundle all that up into a word, the need for security. Okay. The need for security. Okay. And so when we go into this lane and shifting into the psychology of dating, all right, I definitely want to give a few points. All right. Because when we talk about psychology, obviously we're talking about the way in which the brain works and the way in which thinking patterns cultivate. All right. And how they show up when it comes to engaging in relationships. What are the first things that are seen? What are the first things that are looked for? What are the first things that are engaged in when it comes to relationships as a whole? All right. And so, first, let's start with the psychology, all right, of men. Okay. Let's start with the psychology of men. I think it's pretty simple. Okay. I definitely encourage you guys to do additional research on these things. Okay. Don't ever take my word for it. I want you to go do your research on it as well. All right. Um, and I want to pull up some resources here really quickly. All right. So, when it comes to the psychology for men in dating, all right, one of the first things that you have to recognize is men oftentimes operate very simplistic, very bottom lined, okay, and very much off of initially what they see. Okay. This isn't about what's right or wrong. This is not adding ethics and morality into the fold. All right. But what we're dealing with is the psychology. Okay. Just reflecting on how men are wired in these spaces. Okay. So number one is that men often operate initially from what they see. Okay. So before there's ever a step foot into lanes of emotional connections and emotional meanings and baselines and all those things, there is initially what's seen. Okay. To get to the bottom line. All right. And before we do this, we definitely want to differentiate some of these common things when it comes to psychology and men and dating. All right. Because a lot of people might refer to this and say, oh, well, men just want sex. Men are afraid to communicate. Men are don't communicate and are afraid of commitment. Okay. Men don't know what they want. Okay. They're intimidated by strong women, all these different meanings that we might try to add to that. Okay. Please do not allow what you're seeing on Love Island in various different directions fool you into what most men are like. Because I promise you, all men are not like that. Okay. But this is a real conversation because believe it or not, many men are dating through pressure, performance, rejection fatigue. Okay. Emotional underdevelopment, loneliness, fear of inadequacy. There's a lot of things that a man is naturally wrestling with. Okay. As he's stepping foot into the dating space. And women, this is very important for you to understand not to coddle, not to emotionally protect, and not to make it out to be your responsibility to make someone feel comfortable. Okay. But to actually understand to some extent why there's a hesitancy in reaching out, why there might be a hesitancy to speak up, why there might be a hesitancy to do all these kind of things. It's not to, it's just to get to understand it so that we have a better way of addressing it. Okay. This is not about who's right or wrong. So you got to come into this conversation with an open heart. And ladies, we're going to circle back around to the psychology in which you guys see it. And again, for the men in the chat, women in the chat, wherever you are, wherever you're watching this from, at any point, if there's anything that I'm mentioning that's like, yeah, nah, fam, you off on that one. I don't see that. I don't experience that, or that can't be true. Hey, speak up. All right. And we'll unpack it. I'm not claiming to have all this right. We're still in the learning space. Okay. So when we're starting with the men, all right, men often experience dating as a performance test to some degree. Okay. And so for many men, believe it or not, dating is not just about connection, but it also becomes a test to some degree. Okay. Am I attractive enough? This is kind of common questions. Am I attractive enough? That's said inwardly. Let me back up for a second because I know I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to set the stage just a little bit better. Okay. Because as we go into this, all right, because we don't want to necessarily read so many things into this, there's a question that the soul of every man and woman is asking, even since maybe young age, as children of some sort, that begins to get exposed in various different layers, if not answered healthily from the original family, the original setting that this child is born into. Okay. We're talking about their relationship with their parents. Okay. Family dynamics, safetyness within the home. Okay. For men, the question is, am I worthy, and how will I prove it? Okay. The soul of every man asks a deep question. And the question is, am I worthy, and how will I prove it? And if this is not something that is answered, okay, within the direct relationship of correlation to family, okay, parents, relationships and connections there, men will oftentimes go out and find it elsewhere. The meaning to their life, the value to their life based on provision and protection, okay? And what they'll do is they'll try to prove that elsewhere. So when it's not answered, okay, by mom, by pop, okay, by other people in which other relationships were formed, this is how you get the men who turn to having multiple women. This is how you get the man who turns into being a high achiever to the point where his life is consumed by his work and his job. This is how you get the man who does not believe that he is worth much because he is unable to provide financially, specifically, to anyone that he's connected to. Right? Because somewhere along the way, this question, how am I worthy and how will I prove it, was not answered in a fluid space. Okay, so that's really at the core of it. For women, the question's different. Am I lovable, and who will love me? I want you guys to write these two questions in the chat. If you're journaling, great. Okay, but write in the chat. For men, am I worthy, and how will I prove it? For women, am I lovable, and who will love me? Okay, this is kind of how you get the women who, again, when you're little girls and you're engaging with your parents, your loved ones. It's mommy look, daddy look, right? The reaffirmation and confirmation of your beauty, the reaffirmation and confirmation that you're loved as you are, not for what you can do. And when these things are not answered, because someone either did not necessarily know how to answer it because it was a question that was left unanswered for them, okay, all these different things without going too deep into it, will go into various other places to answer it. This is how we land in social media comparisons. This is how we land in job opportunities and being Miss Independent. This is how we land in various different ways because we're constantly trying to prove to ourselves that we're lovable. Okay. But the means to which meeting that doesn't necessarily come from a place of fulfillment. It comes from a place of lack through various different things that we look externally to fill that need. It's a legitimate need, but it's being filled in an illegitimate way. Okay. And so, of course, from a spiritual aspect, both of these things are answered when we actually build a healthy relationship with God, right? Because now we recognize that we are loved, designed, chosen, wanted, redeemed. And because of what God has already given to us through Christ, this is what gives us the ability to move from abundance and not perform for it. Okay. So, fellas, there's no amount of women that you will engage in that's going to satisfy the need of wanting to know, are you worthy, and how you'll prove it. Ladies, it won't be enough men that you can get in the bed with. It won't be enough men that you can date. It won't be enough degrees you can have. It won't be enough anything of that can actually satisfy the legitimate craving your soul has to understand, am I lovable, and who will love me? Am I making sense so far? Put a one in the chat if I am. Okay, I don't want to lose you. Put a one in the chat if this is making sense so far.